First one.
I just
Like,
saw
oh,
that.
man, we're going there.
Wow, yeah.
Who wants to read it?
I'll read it because it's something that I really like that.
Yeah.
My life improved when I learned to accept the apologies I never got. Agree or disagree?
Agree.
Agree. I have conversations with the people that I know I'm not getting apologies from. I'll like literally sit there and have a conversation with them out loud, and it makes the world of difference in how I feel about the situation.
Conversations with them, without them there.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
that.
conversations with them there, but they're not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone else has something to say about this phrase that I kind of saw? I actually, I was putting the class together, I think on Sunday, and I saw the phrase, and it really made me think. Well, anyone else agree, disagree?
I mean, I agree, but I think it's really hard.
Tell me more about that last bit.
No, like, let's say my husband, you know, hurts me without meaning to because whatever reason. I like when he apologizes. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm important and my feelings matter. And I mean, yeah,
I hear that. Yeah.
I disagree.
Good, go for it. Alina and then Jenny. Yes. Alina, what you disagree with
I,
the phrase, right?
yes, with the phrase, because if I imagining that people apologizing or feel bad for what they did, it's not true. So I live in a imaginary world. I mean, I can forgive them, but I know they are not apologize, or they don't feel that they did something wrong.
That's why I have the imaginary conversation.
Exactly.
It's great though, because it doesn't matter like, if they apologize or not, I feel better about it, and I no longer am carrying that around, and it's fine. And in my head, they have said all of these things, and it's great.
I actually had the exact same thought. I was thinking exactly the same as you, Arlene, that, you know, it's like, well, I accept an apology I never got, but they're not apologizing. They are still acting the way that they acted, and they feel justified in the way that they acted. And so therefore, they'll probably do it again. And so how can I accept something that's not being created, that's not being
I
offered,
cannot
it's not
accept
there?
this person knowing that he or she did not apologize and leave them in this area.
Right.
But I cannot imagine.
So it's a good point that you bring up. Yeah, Jenny.
So I took it, like, well, my slant on it is that, like, we were just talking about this, so my friends, both of her parents just passed away. And she was really distraught when her mom passed away in particular, because they never had that like end of life conversation where she got to like wrap up all of the things that happened in her life that her mom, you know, she never got the apology for her mom for whatever happened throughout their lifetime. So if she has the ability within to somehow like make closure or create an apology, because her mom wasn't ever able, you know, to give that apology, and now she's gone and will definitely never be able to. So in that sense, I think it's powerful for the person who is still dealing with that dilemma. Like if they can create an apology, then that might help the person to move on.
I think that's easier in that scenario,
Yeah,
where you can imagine that from that other side, they
yeah,
probably
Mhm.
have an apology now that they're seeing it from like
a
a
godly.
godly place. You can imagine that with a different perspective from that world, they probably do see it differently and would apologize if they could.
Yeah, and I think you're raising a good point, right? Like, if you're upset with someone, like, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just pretend they apologized? You know, turn the other cheek? I mean, is that what are we supposed to do if we're upset with someone else?
Well, I just had I was just with a friend of mine. And she had done something the week before that I didn't think she meant it, but it was hurtful. And I don't know, for me, it's better to just say it. So I just said, I have to get something off my chest. I started with positive, and then I said, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but you did X. And she explained what was going on, and I was fine, and it. You know, she didn't have to apologize, she just said, of course I didn't mean to hurt you. It was because of this. So, I didn't need an apology, I needed an acknowledgement.
And what you did was actually a mitzvah, right? Because there is a mitzvah that there's the Torah, there's a phrase that the Torah says, which you shall not hate your fellow in your heart, you shall surely rebuke your fellow. And what we learn from that is, again, this is from the Torah, and I'm sorry I didn't put the source on where it is, but again, if you want me to find out, and I still owe you a source from last week, yeah. I thought of you this week because I found the source and I was like, oh, Barbara, but then I forgot to bring it. So.
Barbara's a lawyer.
So, there's a great website called Safaria, which has basically the entire Torah online. So you can always find.
What's it called?
Safaria.
Oh, yeah.
Safaria. But I will find it. It comes from Deuteronomy, where it says you shall not hate your fellow in your heart. So there's a prohibition against hating other Jews, right? That's number one. Then there's a second mitzvah of rebuking other people. Now, generally, when you have two different concepts that are put together in the Torah, it's there to teach us something. So the question is, why is you shall not hate your fellow in your heart as part of the sentence? And then the second part of the sentence is you shall surely rebuke your fellow.
In order to not have the hate in your heart.
Yes, you're angry, you're upset with someone else. Don't hate them in your heart. Go and talk to them about it. Right? So number one, there's an important thing to know that when we are upset with other people, because a lot of times we're in a situation where we're upset with someone else and maybe they don't even know what they did, or maybe they know that they did something, but they don't quite understand how upset you are, right? But there's actually a mitzvah to go and talk to them and explain to them what it was like for you, and obviously to try and do it in a way that is going to make them as little defensive as possible, and to do it in a diplomatic way. But that's number one. The thing is to bear in mind that it's actually a mitzvah. Is it easy?
No.
No. A lot of times it's easier to kind of just ignore it and pretend everything's fine than to actually go and talk to the other person. So it's helpful to know that this is actually a mitzvah from the Torah to go and do that. The thing to bear in mind though, do you think this applies to everybody?
No.
No. So Maimonides,
Definitely not.
right, Maimonides clarifies and says that someone who has a pattern of being abusive or manipulative or something like that, then you don't have to go and talk to them, because they're not going to be able to hear. And generally, when it talks about you rebuking your fellow, it's important to know that the mitzvah is only to rebuke someone who's able to hear what you have to say. So if you know that this is a person who either has done it to a lot of other people, or you've tried to speak to them in the past and they're not able to listen to, then such a person, you don't have to go and talk to them about it, right? Because they're not going to be able to listen to what you have to say. Any thoughts, any questions so far? Okay.
The forgiveness, though, even with someone that has a pattern of bad behavior, the forgiveness is so you can let go of it and you're not sitting there and harboring it and like creating this toxic energy around that idea inside of you. So yes, you need, like, I just keep coming back. That's why I have these big conversations, because it gives me an opportunity to have it where I know that the toxic person is not going to accept the conversation. They're not going to accept the review. It's probably just going to make everything worse. But if I don't forgive them, I'm just keeping that inside and it's poisoning me.
Okay, I definitely hear that, and I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to ask the question: is, according to Judaism, do we have to forgive other people?
No.
God deals with us the way that we deal with everybody else. So if we are that harsh in our judgment that we don't want to forgive people, then that's how God's going to deal with us.
Okay, but that's a beautiful idea.
Sorry, like, depending on a friend, you can forgive, or somebody in Denver, you can forgive, because but you're not gonna forgive Hitler, and you're not gonna forgive the Jew. There are women who survived, I've heard them talk, and they have to forgive them. I don't know what they're talking about, it was crazy, but they said they did it for themselves.
That's
And
fine.
if it works for you, fine, but you don't have to forgive bad people. They're evil.
Yeah,
Well,
I think, to clarify, what is the definition of forgiveness? Because I have my own definition of forgiveness. And it doesn't mean that I accept their behavior. It means that I'm gonna let go of it for myself, so I can move on.
so I think there's a difference between letting go and forgiveness. You can let go of something without forgiving someone else, I think. I'll give you an example, and I like to use sometimes a bit of extreme examples, right? Because it helps us see things clearly. Let's say you have a parent who abused a child really bad, right? And the parent never apologizes for it. And the child is able to kind of accept what happened. It doesn't mean they're going to forgive the parents, right? It doesn't mean they're going to have a relationship with the parent. I think forgiveness is forgiving what they did, right? I think it's more than just letting go of I think letting go is, I mean, we haven't yet answered the question of do you have to forgive or not? I mean, so far we had a very strong no. I don't know, a couple of very strong no's, which might be right. We haven't yet discovered. We had a yes. I think that was a yes, right?
I would imagine, I don't know the answer philosophically, you have to forgive everyone. I would imagine it depends, because that's the answer to everything. But it
Thank you all
seems-
for coming.
Yes.
But
But it seems like the healthier way to live would be to find any opportunity to forgive that you could. So you're not living with that inside of you.
And what is our definition of forgiveness?
It's a good question. Let me
Well,
throw
and
it
does
out.
somebody need to ask for forgiveness in order for it to be given?
So I think a very, very important thing in Judaism to understand is that according to Jewish law, the onus is on the person who did wrong to gain forgiveness. Right? It's not, yes, we're gonna, Jessica is right? There is a concept that tells us that the way that God, that way that we treat others is how God treats us. So if we're kind and generous with others, God will be kind and generous with us. If we are forgiving with others, then God will be forgiving with us. And we all, I mean, talk for myself here, I definitely have things that I want God to be forgiving of me. So therefore, it's nice if we can try and forgive others. But if we look at Jewish law, there's a few things to kind of know about. So the first thing is that the onus is on the person who did wrong to ask forgiveness. For example, Yom Kippur is the day where God forgives us for our sins. And yet the Talmud tells us that God will only forgive us for sins between us and other people if we have asked forgiveness for the other people first, right? So if I kind of say something really not nice to someone else, and I come on Yom Kippur and I say to God, I'm really sorry, I did this terrible thing. I said this not nice thing to someone else. God is not going to forgive me unless I've actually gone to that person first and said, I'm really sorry. Can I forgive? Can I forgive you? Can you forgive me for what I did? Right? We have to, and according to Jewish law, the person has to ask 3 times, right? If the person forgives you on the first time, you're good, right? But what's considered sincere for asking for forgiveness sincerely is up to 3 times, and if necessary, using a mediator. or someone else, if you know, if you think that the person's not going to be able to hear it from me right now because they're so badly hurt by what I did, maybe sending someone else, if that would help the situation. So we're talking about a serious attempt at asking for forgiveness. And I think that's very, very important to understand about Judaism, that it's yes, we can talk about our response to our what we do in terms of other people and whether we forgive them or not. But when we talk about forgiveness, it's on the onus is on the person who did wrong to ask for forgiveness, and it has to be in the context of changed behavior, right? Yes.
I just have to say, like, I'm sure some of you or many of you have seen this, but every year, like around Rosh Hashanah, you see on social media, if there's anybody I've heard, oh, I'm sorry. And I think it's like ridiculous because it's a cop out. Like, if you really hurt somebody, you know about it and you should deal with it on a one-on-one basis. I mean, has anybody seen that?
I'm debating whether I should get on my soapbox or not.
Well, do they do it, will say,
Yeah, people do that
they did
too.
say, if I've been offensive, I'm.
Yeah, I know.
So
It's not
there's two
personal,
things
it's
that I want to say is this: where does it come from? It comes from this place of that Yom Kippur does not forgive unless you've asked for forgiveness from other people, right? According to Jewish law, what does it mean to ask forgiveness? Putting it on social media doesn't count, right? Sending someone a text message and saying, "Will you forgive me?" doesn't count. What really counts is that you have to sit down and think to yourself, oh my gosh, I did X, Y, Z. Let me go and ask that other person for forgiveness. And if you really want it to be forgiveness, to be effective, don't wait till Erev Yom Kippur to
Yeah,
do it,
right,
right?
exactly.
Don't let the other person stew in the hut for an entire
It
year.
bothers me every year when I see
The
it.
thing where I think that is a purpose to it is that sometimes we hurt other people and we are not aware of it.
Right.
Right.
That was just-
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think where that comes from is that if it is done in a way to open up a space and to say kind of, if I have hurt you, please come tell me so that I can forgive you, right? Because sometimes that happens.
But
We
then
hurt other
say it to the
people.
person.
Right, but sometimes we don't know who we
Yeah.
are hurt and
Right.
upset.
Say it to
So
everybody you
yeah,
know.
yeah, ideally we should. Ideally we should. But a blanket, I hope you forgive
Yeah, you
me
can't.
to everyone. It's
Yeah,
not
that's
it's not what
true.
Jewish law expects of if we're talking about you have to ask for forgiveness 3 times and sincerely
Close to
and and your mediators through Facebook, right? You're
Right.
Yes, Jenny, were you gonna say something?
Well, I just think there needs more marketing and advertising around this concept. Because I just don't think that people really follow that, I guess. That,
Yes.
I agree.
yeah,
And I think
Because-
it's gotten a bit, sorry, this is a little bit of a soapboxy one, and I wasn't intending it to go, but I think the concept of forgiveness has gotten a little bit twisted over time, because where does this idea come from? That there is, the question is, how should we react to being asked for forgiveness? So I don't know if this is Jewish law, right? But my understanding is that we should be opening a space for forgiveness. Someone comes to you and asks you sincerely for forgiveness, then we should try and be forgiving to them. Like sometimes you need to go on a healing journey first, fair enough, but we should. And in fact, the Talmud says that if someone asks you for 3 times for forgiveness sincerely and different ways each time, and you still don't, it's considered achsariyot, which is a little bit of cruelty. Right, which is, it's a harshness, right? Yes, someone's upset you, and if you need to go and do healing for it, go and do healing. But someone sincerely, they're changing their behavior. They sincerely feel bad about it. They're coming, they're swallowing their humble pie, and they're coming to ask you for forgiveness. We should open up a space to forgive other people, right? So that's number one. The second thing is that forgiveness, if we can do it, is good for us, right? You know, if we can let go of the hurt, even without forgiveness, if we can let go of the hurt, it's very good for us. So with those two, and then there's a third thing on top of it, which is this idea that if we are forgiving to others, that's how God is going to be forgiving to us, which is an enticing incentive to forgive others. So with these three concepts, there's kind of been a movement on to encourage people to forgive, which is a good movement, but when you sort of divorce it from the idea that forgiveness has to be earned in Jewish law, right? It seems, according to Jewish law, if you look through it, forgiveness has to be earned, then it does get a little bit distorted. And then you sort of have a space where people will be like, oh, if I hurt anyone, please forgive me. And like, oh, if anyone doesn't forgive me, well, they're a cruel person. No, that doesn't, you're distorting the text, and you're distorting the Jewish ideas. So I think there's a space for it, but I think it's gotten a little bit twisted over time. Does that kind of make sense? And yeah, we do have to, because there's two parts to it. There's the part of, yeah, we should try and be forgiving towards other people. And there's the part that forgiveness has to be earned. That's what it seems to be clear from Jewish law, that forgiveness has to be earned. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments on that?
I'm dealing with really bad situations, like really ugly situations, or someone has really truly harmed you in real ways. I mean, I guess this is the difference between letting go and forgiveness, but it seems to me until you forgive that person, and it's a person who's not there, they're just not there or healed or working on themselves or growing in a way that they're ever going to ask for that forgiveness. That keeps you stuck in that place.
So my opinion, and I could be wrong, is that those sorts of situations, I don't think you can start to think or talk about forgiveness until you've gone on your own healing from what's happened. Right? You're talking about something, again, I'll use a big example, right? Abuse, something like that. You're gonna tell someone who's been abused about forgiveness? Like, no, it's just the person first has to heal, accept what happens, and then whatever, maybe forgiveness will or won't happen. But you can't even begin to start to think or talk about forgiveness until you.
But part of that healing is the forgiveness. I think that's where my brain keeps going back to, is that without that piece, there's always this part there's this part of you that is consistently stuck in a not great place. Like it's consistently stuck in, I've accepted what happened to me. I'm okay with it. I'm moving past it in my life, but that person still wronged me and is still a really I hope that they get what's coming to them. Like that still eats at you until you find that forgiveness.
But I think it depends on situation. For example, after shooting in school, those parents that their kids died, you know, and if this, for example, shooter in the court will ask, oh, forgive me, you know, I had the whatever thinking. I don't think it is okay for these parents to forgive at this moment. You know, it could be healing. They need to accept that their kids are not there with them. Whatever process they need to go, they cannot forgive.
Even
It
after that
takes
process,
years
though.
and years
I
and
don't
years.
think there's,
Even after
I
that
don't think
process.
there's full healing from something like that.
No,
Exactly.
Like how does someone, there's a part of that stays forever, right?
And even if that part of that stays forever, like if you hear some of these parents talk, you'll hear them say, I can't hold on to hatred for that person anymore because I can't live my life that way, and that's not the way that my child would want me to live. Like they forgive them for the sake of their child. And it's I can't know what that's like for that parent. And so I don't know that I can imagine in my world, yeah, it would be really hard. And I also can imagine just from my own stuff that's happened, I can't live with that. I can't move forward in my life the way that I want to and grow as a person while still holding on to all of that hatred for someone who will never forgive.
And the question though is that acceptance or forgiveness, and maybe it doesn't make a difference what it
See,
is.
I think
but-
there's a difference because, let's say with abuse. You can come to terms that this person abused you. Without thinking that it was wrong.
You can think that it's wrong.
Yeah, so in other words, like, you can stop having angst about it because they were a victim of their circumstance. I mean, most of the people that hurt others are hurt people. I mean, so
And you can do it even without justifying their behavior.
to me.
Just like
it's-
that, you did something that was evil.
Yeah,
And I have to let go of that and say, I'm okay with you as a human. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm not okay with your action.
no,
So,
no,
so this is where I think I'm switching it up a little bit, because I think forgiveness means repairing the relationship.
Right.
well,
And
the person is dead.
you're not, right, like you can accept what they did and you can let go of the hurt, but I think true
No.
forgiveness is repairing the relationship, right? Like, if you
But
think
you
about the
can't repair
process.
absolute
You
forgiveness, so you're saying,
Right.
like, yeah,
You said, I'm sorry.
Because if you
That's
think
okay.
about forgiveness of someone coming and asking, can you forgive me? What they're seeking is to redress the relationship, repair the relationship.
But I'm talking
The
about
person has to be
people that will
alive.
never do that. There's a
Yes.
difference between saying that behavior was okay and just being able to move on, like Jessica said, having processed all the harm
Accepting it,
that was
yeah.
done. And then it's like, but I'm not gonna like keep hatred in my heart. I'm moving on.
But
you know.
I don't want that person, so repairing the relationship, but that's I can't imagine. For some of these situations, let's say with the shooters, like,
We can let go of the hurt.
you
but
can let go of their hurt.
Right.
so in your definition, then, that means like the shooter's the one that needs to ask for forgiveness,
Of
right?
course.
So
This is what
Dead.
Jewish law seems to say, that the onus is on the person to ask for forgiveness.
Well, they
Is there any,
the
is there
onus is on
any
the
source?
abuser, the onus-
I have not found a source that, I mean, you can forgive someone who doesn't ask you for forgiveness. You can, but will they get forgiven?
But then
I don't know.
I've heard these stories in the news where, somebody did kill somebody's family member and the person goes to the prison and forgives them because it's just hurting them too much to not.
Which is fine, and and I want to just point out something that what you said, and when you said it, I heard you say this, is that when you talk about forgiveness, you talk about it as a later point in the process, right? Like there's the hurt and the healing and the acceptance, and then it's the letting go. I can't deal with it. I think I just want to make that point in clear, that because sometimes people go through really difficult things and they're told just forgive. And the point that I want to make out is that you're not a bad person for not just forgiving, because you first have to heal from what the person did before we can even start talking about it. Again, I don't know, but from what the Jewish sources seem to teach us about forgiveness is a person has to ask for forgiveness, right? There's two parts. So yeah, you can forgive them and you can let go and you can accept it, but you're still not having a relationship with them,
Right.
right?
But
So
is that required? So let's say someone who was really nasty to you comes to you, has changed their ways right before you please, like the third one, you definitely have changed your ways. Fine, I forgive you, but I still don't want to be friends with you.
why
this-
not? If you really forgive them
If you truly forgive them,
and they've truly changed.
Maybe because your trust has been broken.
Yeah.
but if it's true, if you've truly forgiven them, then
Mm.
they should have the opportunity to rebuild the trust. I think that's the part that's hard to determine.
And I'm going to throw this out here now. I'm curious to hear what you think. Is that maybe we cheapen the word forgiveness when we say and again, I think there's an acceptance and a letting go. I'm not sure it's the same as forgiveness though.
Right.
It's
I think
not.
forgiveness is a beautiful thing that can happen, but it needs both parts. It needs two
Well,
parties.
I just
in
feel
the
like what
relationship.
you're explaining, like, then most of the time, we're not gonna really ever get forgiveness. Like, forgiveness is really hard to attain. Because
Yes
half the
and
time,
no.
like, the other person doesn't even know they need to ask for forgiveness.
And they don't care.
Yeah.
And they don't care.
So
Are we,
And then
and
And it, like you said, it requires a significant change by them.
Yeah,
Which we all
Acknowledgement
know,
change.
like, I know it's hard for me to change my own habits, even though I ask,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so sorry I did that. Oh, there I did it again. You know?
Like what they're saying makes sense because 99% of people don't hurt people on purpose. You know, there's the abuser that, of course, then that's like a whole nother category, but most normal people, when you hurt your friend, you're not hurting them on purpose. So you didn't know that you hurt them because you wouldn't have done it in the first place. So you really need that friend to tell you,
Right,
hey, like, I didn't appreciate that you did this.
yes.
right.
And then at that point.
I'm gonna challenge it, and I'm gonna say, and again, I'm curious to hear, you can challenge me back as well. But I think 90% of the things, and that's whatever, I pulled that number up, so whatever, right? A vast majority of the times that I'll give you an example, right? I get short with my kid and I yell at them, right? I know I did wrong. I know I have to apologize and ask for forgiveness for them. And if I'm genuine about it and I say sorry to my kid for yelling at, I'm sorry that I lost my temper and I yelled at you and I'm going to try not to yell at you. Most of the time, my kid's going to forgive me for it. Right. And most of the time, those are the times where we have the forgiveness, right? Like those are the things where we're doing. We're hurting people, usually the people that are closest to us in little ways. And the more we kind of acknowledge and ask for forgiveness for those things, the more we become people that other people can turn around to us and say, you know what, it really wasn't nice that we arranged to go out on Wednesday and then last minute you just cancelled me. Like I really felt like you didn't care, whatever it was, right? So I think that forgiveness can kind of happen, and it does happen, and it should happen in our relationships.
So in those instances, yes. Like, and I practice that with a lot of my friends in these little tiny like micro like fights or whatever. Like I had a friend-
Ruptures.
Yeah,
Ruptures
I
and
had a friend
repairs, right?
just
Yeah.
today. She's like, I was really annoyed that like you changed your plan last minute and you came a day late. And then I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't like I shouldn't have made a commitment to that. And then that was it. Like she came to me, she told me, and then I was like, oh, okay. So, but I feel like if we can practice in these little situations, then we can, make it a bigger part of our life.
And it's a beautiful thing when you think
is.
about it, like forgiveness in those rights. Because imagine if we didn't have the tool of forgiveness, right? And she was upset with you and you didn't really have a way to repair that. Like if you think about it, like it's a gift, this forgiveness.
And then it goes
because-
away like that.
Yeah, it goes away because
Yeah.
you can't go say, oh, your friend tells you, I'm really sorry you can't. So you can't be like, okay, fine, let's wind the clock back and we'll do it, right? You can't do that, but you can instead acknowledge and take ownership for it, and it repairs the relationship.
Well, and be conscious of it in the future time, not to do that if you
Well,
can avoid
Yeah,
it.
but I also think it's a beautiful thing with kids because then we're teaching our kids also forgiveness.
Right.
And how to ask for forgiveness, and maybe you did something to hurt someone else, and so in that sense, I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think in the bigger things, it can be done. It's just hard, and sometimes you have to rebuild trust in a relationship, right? Like, forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean it's asked and once and done, right? Like if it's a big deal that someone did something, then it can be rebuilt, but it could take time. It could take, months of the trust being rebuilt, but both parties kind of have to be open to that process of rebuilding. We didn't there's a whole
Didn't
other
get to
part that we
number
didn't get to.
six.
Yes. We've got 5 minutes, we can just see it. Okay, in terms of And so we spoke about forgiveness and repairing relationships and strengthening them. Do you think there are ever times when we have to let go of relationships?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like it was a pretty unanimous yes, right? So I think we started this course by talking about the importance of having positive relationships. And it's important to understand that the same places, which is Pirkei which talk about the importance of having positive relationships, also says, is a source is taken from Pirkei. It says, distance yourself from a evil. We could call it bad. A bad neighbor. Do not befriend a bad person. One, and do not despair of the arrival of punishment. And what it's telling us here is that just like it's important to have those positive relationships in our lives, we have to be real and honest and recognize that negative relationships have a negative impact on us. And interestingly, it says, do not despair of the arrival of punishment, is because sometimes when we're hurt by someone else, we can get so eaten up by the injustice of it, right? Like, especially, you know, if that person that hurt you has got stature or prestige, and it feels like so like unjust. How could they
Yeah,
do that and get
right.
away with it? And Pirkei says, don't worry, don't despair of punishment, right? You should know that there's justice. We may not see it here, but there is justice in the world, and don't worry about that, because this person will have justice taken to them. So two things that I'm gonna kind of end with is that what should our attitude be when we have to let go of a relationship? So this is a story from the Talmud. Reb Meir once saw a group of people that were bad people. And he turned around and he prayed, and he prayed to God that they be destroyed. And his wife said to him, that shouldn't be your prayer. She said, pray that their wickedness be destroyed. And I think that's our really, when we look at people who are having a negative impact on us, the more we can kind of look at them with, I don't know what the right word is compassion, because a lot of times these people that are having a negative impact on us are people who are not healthy, right? They're not emotionally healthy. They're not capable of having healthy emotional relationships, and it's actually very sad if you think about it. So the more we can feel sorry for them, doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with them, but the more we can kind of look at them through the lens of compassion, the better it is for us. And there's two sort of questions to ask ourselves before we have to decide with whether to let go of a relationship or not. And I want to just say something. It's a very, very hard thing to do, right? Because we have to be honest with ourselves, because sometimes a relationship is fun, or it's exciting, or, you know, letting go of a relationship means letting go of different things. And that's why it's very helpful to have someone who we can discuss these things with, whether it's a mentor, whether it's an objective friend, right? Someone that can really look at this, because what do we want to look at is, what is the impact on me, right? Me being in this relationship with this person, what is the impact on me? Is it that every time I spend time with them, it impacts me negatively? Then maybe that's a relationship that we have to look at. And the two sort of questions to ask is the other person willing to change? Do they want to change? Because if they don't want to change, there's nowhere to go, right? And even if they are willing to change, am I willing to be patient in their process of change? Because change takes time. So those are the questions to kind of look at before we have to answer the question of, do we keep this relationship or do we let it go? All right, so we discussed a lot tonight, from forgiveness. But the caution is that the caution is it's very hard to make these decisions on our own, because we can be very clouded. So it's very good to have someone that we can discuss it with, whether it's a mentor, whether it's an objective friend. That's the caution.
I took this
Thank you.
class many years ago, and it was kind of in line with Musar, conscious discipline. And the lady that taught it, she gave the examples of things, not just with kids, and she would say, like, You know, if someone's honking at you, or if someone cusses at you, or if someone just does something, not necessarily someone that you're close with. She said she wishes them well, like maybe not in person, like, but just, it's almost like you just send positive energy to them. Because that way it doesn't stick to you. So it kind of is like bound, yeah, you just say, okay, they're having a hard time, they're not happy, it has nothing to do with me. I wish them well, that they'll be able to work out whatever it is. And like, I actually took this Imuna healing class many years ago, and the woman was teaching how you can actually like contain energy and send positive energy to people. So supposedly it's like a thing. So maybe even if it's somebody, and that made me think about, wow, if it's someone that, like, there's somebody that ghosted me for, for some reason, I don't understand why, just because I didn't wanna like follow her to her next job or whatever, and so it's like, well, maybe I just need to send her positive energy, and maybe I'll reach out one more time and say, look, I don't know what I did that got you to like stop communicating with me, but I just feel like, I'm sorry, and I don't have any hard feelings, and you'll move on and be okay, whatever.
Yeah, and yeah, beautiful. And I think sometimes it's a lot easier to do it with people that we're not in a relationship with, right? Because it doesn't hurt as much. Okay, they're having a bad day, right? But like when it's someone we in a relationship with, and we love and care for, and they love and care for us, and they do something hurtful,
Right.
it stings a lot more. But obviously, if we can forgive other people, it's a beautiful thing to do.
Thank
Alright.
you.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, you're more than
Seriously, in order to let it go,